part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
Hello, and welcome to the last episode of Season 1 of Producing While Asian. I'm your host, Don Mike Mendoza, and today's conversation is with Angelo Santos. Angelo is a producer in film, and he's also a writer and a part-time director. And we're here to hear about his experience and kind of talk about how he got to where he's at today, especially with his first feature-length executive production project called The Girl Who Left Home, which is a movie that I was in and is how we met. So I hope you enjoyed today's conversation and that you also go back and review all of Season 1. So welcome again to Producing While Asian.
I'm so sorry for your loss.
I'm working at the restaurant tomorrow.
I'm sorry, Christine. I hate to do this.
If we don't give him a month and a half of rent, it's over.
There's a saying in the Philippines, where there's life, there still lies hope.
You know, maybe this is what I'm supposed to do. Fulfill my parents' legacy.
Christine, no. It's always been your dream to be on stage. You can't just let that go.
And now, are you going to stay?
Well, welcome to Producing While Asian, Angelo. It's so good to see you online and talk to you today. Thanks for being here.
Of course. Good to see you too, Don Mike.
So, clearly the show is called Producing While Asian, and I chose you to be a guest because you're one of the many amazing AAPI producers that I know, and I know about you, but our audience does not. So give them a little bit of a window into how you got where you are, almost like the Cliff Notes version of how Angelo Santos came to be a national producer of film and TV.
Oh, sure. So I guess my history, I think I fell into the whole wanting to be an actor kind of thing. And this was, I don't want to date myself, but it was in the 90s. So. And, you know, it was hard back then. It's still very hard. I think it's easier now for an Asian actor to establish a career in film, right? So what I wanted to do, and actually I also started as a writer as well. And what, you know, the stuff that I wanted to write at the time was about being Filipino American, growing up Filipino American, growing up Asian American, those kind of experiences. And what I realized was that those who will be reading my scripts will be producers, and they're the ones who will be, you know, making the film. And then when I figured that out, I said, oh, well, you know, why don't I should produce, right? So when I was living in LA, I had a 9-to-5 job. I took classes at UCLA Extension. It was actually a great program at UCLA Extension called Making a Short Film Program. And what was great about this program is they would actually put you in a certain discipline, if you were a writer, if you were a director, or if you were a producer. And I put myself as a producer just because I know I wasn't really established as a writer, but I know I could write, right? But I didn't know how to produce. So that I said, go the producer route. And what they did is they actually broke us off. We actually had like a little pitch party where all the writer directors would pitch me their projects, right? Because I was probably like one of 4 or 5 producers in that class. And what was great about it is, like, you know, we got the pitch, we heard the pitch, and then we chose the project to go forward. And what was great about this program too is it kind of really just threw you into the lion's den, pretty much, where we had to pitch our project to the teachers. There were 4 professors, each in a discipline of producing, writing, editing, and directing. So the project I pitched with now, who's my friend, was called Kiss by Season. It was a short. Oh, and this is a short film. So we pitched it, and when you pitch the project, that's when you move forward into sort of the next quarter. I believe in the UCLA it was quarters. So say you had a class of like 500, I think it was about 200, then you whittle down to about, say, 50 with sort of 10 projects, and then you move on from there. The first pitch was you move on to 10 projects, and then from there you kind of learn more about producing. The director learns about directing, and then we kind of bounce off ideas about the writing and all that fun stuff. So we had to go through a second pitch where from the 10 you're down to about 3, 4, or 5 projects. And so in our second pitch we made it to the 4 or 5 projects, and from there we're able to make our short with the resources of UCLA and having sort of an accredited school as helping us with getting the film done. And it did, actually, having the backing of UCLA. I mean, it didn't really kind of get us any equipment or anything like that, but it did get us some pretty good deals with the studio that we rented, which was free, and we did at CBS, which was amazing. But then it's also like, as they also taught you how to raise money for it, because that's actually one of the biggest things about producing is raising the money for your film, raising the money for this film. So, and what was great about this program, the end all be all, or the sort of the grand prize, I guess you could say, was not only just making your short film, but we got to screen at the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences building in Beverly Hills. And that was wow. So we were like one of 5 films to do that, at the end of the whole program. So that was the big incentive. It's like, okay, we're not only making a film, but we're actually getting it screened. The organization that throws the Oscars, right? So from there, I said, yeah, I'll become a producer. But then also I didn't want to stray away from my writing as well. Yeah, so from there I kind of moved back to New York, got my foot in other short films from NYU. I produced a lot of student shorts, NYU and Columbia. Yeah, and then I just did produce shorts here and there. And then I produced my own short that I wrote and directed. I say I executive produced that, and I had a couple of producers who were friends that helped me produce that too. So my first feature as a producer, as you know, Don Mike, is The Girl Who Left Home. And yes. And so that came upon. So it's funny when as a producer you should be looking for projects and stuff like that. And I wasn't really looking to produce any other filmmakers' projects. I was like, okay, I'm a writer now. I know I could direct. I was like, okay, I'm going to produce my own stuff with the help of other producers because you need that help. But that project kind of came on because I met Mallory Ortega, who's the writer director of The Girl Who Left Home, sort of on a funny situation where she hates when I tell this story, but so my film, which is entitled Pabinhikan, I submitted to a Asians on Film Festival in LA, and it was pretty much like an online film festival. And from my festival journey, I was pretty confident I was going to win something because my film was in a lot of festivals, a lot of Asian American festivals like around the country. And so when I submitted to this, I was like, oh yeah, and people were laughing. I thought it'd be funny. It's like, yeah, I was so confident, and then I get the results, and then it just said, nope, not winning. But the project that won was a short called Mango Sticky Rice, directed by Mallory Ortega. And I said, oh, Ortega, she's Filipino, right? So I tried Googling her, and there's really nothing on Mal yet at the time. So kind of just put that on the shelf, until I found out that her short, Mango Sticky Rice, was playing here in New York at the Asian American International Film Festival. And that's when I was like, I'm going to go watch it. I want to see the film that beat my film. And then so I went to the opening of the Asian American Film Festival. I met Mallory. She thought I was stalking her. She was a little scared of me, and she will admit that. But then, and then later on I saw the film and I was like, oh yeah, okay, I know why she beat my film, because it's a really good film. Anyway, after that, Mallory, we sort of became like film friends, right? We met at the festival, we hung out right after her screening, and then we just chatted. And then I went to LA I want to say 2017, maybe 2017 or 2018. I reached out to Mallory and I was just like, hey, what are you doing? Let's have coffee, blah, blah, blah. And so we did, and it was just more of like just networking with her, getting to know her, and then seeing what she's up to. And then I found out that she was still in pre-production for The Girl Who Left Home. Actually, at the time, it's called Nanaiko. From then, I was just, I said, hey, send me the script. I'd be interested in reading it. So she did. And then I was brutally honest with some of my notes they gave her. And this is how I kind of figured out, like, that I wanted to work with her. Is like, she was just brutally, I don't say brutally, but she was just she took what I said. She wasn't very defensive about it, and, so she accepted it. And so from then on, I sort of started as an associate producer on that film, and then sort of became the unit production manager, and then sort of moved up my way towards being a producer on the film, because it was it was a great story. I mean, the talent, Don Mike, you're one of them in that film, was kind of off the hook.
It was so great. And, thank you to both of you for choosing me to be part of the cast. And I will say, I feel like I was spoiled, like that being my first feature film experience. Like, I feel like, any other one I go into, I'm just going to be like, well, it's not Girl Who Left Home. Like, I can't like be as, I guess it was very comfortable being on set. And I think culturally speaking too, because we were all Filipino for that film. And, just everybody that was cast or hired or whoever were all just like really great personalities. And, yeah, of course, with any film family, there's like a little bit of tension here and there. But for the most part, everybody was there for the cause, which I thought was awesome. And, you and Mallory and Dylan are responsible for that. So I'm very grateful to that experience. And so I love that that's... And Reswin, yeah. So I'm really glad to know that, for you, like your first feature film producer experience is that one too. So that's awesome.
Yeah, I think it was. Well, it's funny. So because at the time that it was around the time that Mallory was in development for this project, I was at a period of like, why are there not so many Filipino features? I mean, I've seen a lot of Filipino American shorts. Of course, we had the debut, but that was in 2000 or 1999, right? And then we still haven't really had anything yet until actually, I mean, this year has been amazing, or in last year with Yellow Rose. I mean, it's coming. The features with Filipino stories, it's coming. It's just it's taken some time, But and it's weird where it's at that time I was like, yeah, how come? I didn't feel like there was this collaboration effort by a lot of Filipino filmmakers with each other. So I think Mallory's project was right for me because also I knew I wouldn't be able to write and direct a musical. So that's why I decided to produce one.
I mean, that's smart. I feel like I pick projects based on things that I want to know more about or I want to experience, for the first time. And I wanted to be an associate producer on this movie because I didn't know what producing a film was like. And so I wanted to be in the like learning seat to see, how it all worked together, how you guys were functioning, how you raised money, stuff like that. Because, producing film is so different from producing stage theater. Definitely in terms of how, not just how you fundraise, but like sources of money and the strategies to raising money. They're similar, but it's still different. Things that you pay for or need to pay for differ a lot. And so I gained a lot of valuable insight and knowledge and experience from just assisting where I could. So I think a lot of people benefited from being part of that experience. So
actually, I want to intro with this. We had a little small world thing. Me and Mallory is like we were scouting locations right before filming, and then for some reason we just learned that we actually had the same producing teacher.
Oh, wow.
Because my producing teacher at the extension program taught USC, and then she was actually, and then she taught Mallory at USC when she was there, and I was like, oh, I was like, oh, no wonder we're kind of getting along right now, producing wise, because it's like we were taught by the same person. She was very like strict and hardcore, sticking to the rules, and so yeah.
Well, I feel like that's important. Are you willing to shout out who your mutual teacher is to give them some love?
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, her name is Brenda Goodman. I haven't seen her in, I don't say 20 years. Yeah.
Time to get together. Hey, Brenda, if you're listening, it's time. So you guys were on the same page because you came from the same kind of philosophy, right, of producing, which I think is so cool. But I love when that happens in the arts, just because it is a small community, whether it's film or theater or dance or whatever. You know, you end up realizing just how many people you have in common with a lot of folks, even if you've never met this person ever, or like it's somebody that you may have been dancing around each other, or like you were kind of partially connected but didn't realize. But I love the connection when it's like a professor or a teacher, because then you're like, oh, it makes sense. Like that's why we vibe, because we believe in the same thing. So
exactly.
Looking for new insights on the Cleveland sports scene with a unique side of Cleveland sports history? Then you found the perfect podcast. I'm John Sable.
And I'm Scott Sable, and we're hosts of the Sable Brothers on the Baseline podcast, a podcast about Cleveland sports, but not your typical podcast about the land's sports teams. Join us as we embark on a journey of sharing a unique and historical side of Cleveland sports history with the help of some former Cleveland sports stars and other historical figures.
All right here on the Sable Brothers on the Baseline podcast, part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
Hi, this is Angelo Santos, and you are watching Producing While Asian.
You were doing producing work, you know, leading up to Girl Who Left Home, but talk to us about kind of when you felt that you embodied the producer role, when you kind of were on a project or on set or maybe in a conversation with a friend or a loved one, and you know, it kind of came to you and you're like, this is me, this is who I am, this is what I want to do and what I want to be. Obviously not like the big be all end all thought, but like when did you have that moment where it clicked for you that you're like, yeah, that's what I want to do?
It was definitely the first short, which is called Kiss by Season, which we showed in Beverly Hills. It's almost a vanity moment when you see your name on that big screen, you know, and you're just like, holy wow, that's me. And then it's like, you know, and then your family's there and they're kind of seeing that, your friends are there, and it's just like, wow, I did that, you know. And then it also I don't want to say it's like a vanity moment when you have people react, and I think there's a difference between film and TV. Is like after you show a film, you have that opportunity that you don't have with TV, where you have audience members just come up to you and just, you know, thank you, you know, because it touched them, you know, or it made him think, or it made him cry or laugh, and that's a great feeling. That's like, oh, you know, we did that, you know, and that's very empowering, and you know, just to give that feeling to somebody that it actually touched them in that way. So I think it was with that first film is when that's when it hit. It's like, I do want to produce, but then I might get in trouble for this. When I started producing a lot of short films with various directors. So when I started producing, like here back in New York, I wasn't really producing specifically Asian American or Filipino American stories. I was kind of just want to get my feet wet in trying to learn how to produce. So with the films at NYU and Columbia and SVA, actually School of Visual Arts, you know, you interact with directors that, I don't say this, where it's like you interact, you know, you work with directors and writers where it's like, oh, maybe we're not going to be friends after this kind of thing, you know?
yeah, of course.
You know, so that kind of hit me. It was like, oh, and then you're looking at some of them. It's like, oh, wait, I could write, you know, I could direct, I think, you know. And so it kind of became, I kind of veered towards that, where it's like, oh yeah, let me try my hand in writing, directing, right, you know, and which I did, and that was, for me, that was a great experience too, because I learned how to direct. I mean, directing's not easy, but also as a producer, so coming from producer and production background, you kind of learn how to direct with production in mind. You know, it's like, oh, you know, you got to just stick to the budget. Don't go crazy with some of your shots, because you know that it's not gonna. The producer, who's yourself, is not gonna go for it because there's no money, right? So, I think that helped me out as a producer. Also, is learning how to to direct, I think, because you kind of, because it's also then, as a producer, you kind of understand where the director's coming from, you know,
Sure.
that kind of thing. You know, it's more like when you're directing, you should also learn where what I learned when I was working on my project, I was learning how to work with actors as a director, and it's like, you know, one of the techniques is just trying to understand what an actor has to go through, you know, and yeah, you know, so the same thing. You have to learn what a director is going to go through when you're doing your project.
Yeah, because I feel like, you know, as the producer, you're especially if you're an executive producer, like you're kind of the leader of the pack. And so you've got to know, like, you don't have to be an expert in everything, but you at least have to understand like how all parts of your team work and how all of your departments work, and know like what you said, like how to talk to certain people that have specific roles. And I feel like it builds that empathy too. So like if a director comes to you with a problem, you know, you have a little bit of a better understanding of like, okay, like we can solve this together. And like, or if they're solving it, you understand that like, oh, I can trust them to do what they need to do to fix it. So you're not like, oh, well, I'm in the dark, I don't know how that works. Like, I feel like that's kind of a theme in most of the arts, well, most of the parts of the arts industry now. It's like we kind of all have to be almost like a one-man band to understand things, just because the world is so autonomous, especially with art. Sometimes like we have people that are actors but they produce stuff for web, and like, you know, producers who also you know, perform in certain things, and so everybody has multi facets to them. So that's, which is great, because that kind of transitions to this next question that I want to ask you, is the scale question. And you've talked a lot about producing, and it's very clear that you're a producer, but on that scale of 1 to 10, 1 to producer, you know, 10 being I'm absolutely producer, that's all I do, or 1 absolutely not, where do you fall in that range? Because especially, you know, you do more things than just producing. You're a writer, you've directed, you know, where do you think you fall on that scale, and why?
I think I would fall probably on a 7 to 8, mainly because writing is my passion, and writing is what I would like to be in the industry. I like producing. I think so. Over the years of producing, what I feel like right now, especially after producing The Girl Who Left Home, was, you know, Mallard became a friend. I have another friend who became a friend, you know, through meeting and networking, and I'm producing her feature as well right now, or co-producing her feature. I feel like I would like to produce just friends features because, you know, it's kind of like that. There's this stake in it that's not just me. It's just me. It's like I want to do this for them, you know, because they've sweated, you know, years to try and get their project done, you know, and it's good. It's like the story's good. That's actually the first. It's like the story has to be good in order for me to say, yes, I'm going to produce this. But then also, you know, there's stuff I still do also want to write, like I said. Directing, really not so much. I don't think it's my forte or what I really want to be known for. I would like to just direct my stuff that I write. I think I would probably direct a short that somebody else wrote, just to kind of get that experience down, you know? But yeah, as a producer, I would say 7 or 8, because I do want to produce friends projects, because it's as tough it is to make a film. It's so much fun. I mean, you and I both experienced that on set, you know, and having that, you know, it's having produced different projects, Filipino, non-Filipino, or Asian, non-Asian. There's a big difference just in terms of, you know, it might sound sort of tribal, but it's like inside jokes. You can make on sets, you know, or and then also just like you have these weirdly shared experiences, you know, with you know, everybody in the cast or the crew, you know. So, you know, with you know, The Girl Left Home, I think a lot of us bonded because we all had that experience of like, oh yeah, who here was, you know, that person that made whose parents made them sing in front of everybody at the family parties, right?
Right. Yeah, and like who here like had the experience where they told their parents they wanted to do the arts, and their parents were like, no. It's exactly very similar. And,
I was actually very fortunate that was not the problem.
Yeah, my parents, like, didn't they flat out say no, but they were just like, are you sure? like, we'll support you, but are you sure?
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, you know. So, but I agree. I feel like it's kind of what happened on sets like Crazy Rich Asians, or, you know, movies that are kind of culturally specific. You know, you do have that shared experience of your backgrounds to all kind of mesh together. You know, I do love seeing that there's a lot of Filipino inspired film and theater and music and all that that's coming out in the last 5 years or so, and clearly it's coming, as you mentioned earlier. I partly think it's because our generation is now grown up enough and has enough resources and wherewithal to really say, let's go for it, you know, and like, we all have like a big enough network that we can all collaborate and reach out to each other and make these things happen. So you're right.
Yeah.
It took time. It just took
Yeah.
our generation growing up to be able to have that access.
Yeah, and I think you hit on something where it's like the network has grown so much, and now we're at a point where it's like the next generation will have that network that we didn't necessarily have, you know, and
Right.
You know, they really, next generation should use that to their benefit and advantage, because I mean, their stories are different than our stories. So,
and it's really great to see kind of the generation not far in front of us, but like the next generation up also be willing to open up and collaborate with us, you know, to reach down, and not down, but, you know, reach to the new generation and say, hey, I'm an OG like Emmy Collegato, but I'm gonna do as much as I can to be present and support a new project like The Girl Who Left Home, because it's important, you know, to you have all of these figures who we grew up with watching that are ready and willing to be part of it. Where sometimes you find in other situations you have like older generations that are like, well, it's mine, like you can struggle on your own, I'm not going to help you. But I feel like in our community, it's really an honor to see that be a thing, because I think the support of the generation in front and the generation behind is always imperative to working. So with that in mind, in your path, talk to me about kind of challenges you faced kind of making your mark as a Filipino Asian American producer and writer and director. You know, kind of what have you seen in your experience that you're hoping will hopefully change with this network that's growing, and, you know, in terms of like gatekeepers and people who are non-believers and stuff like that, like, you know, talk to us about that.
Well, I'm glad you brought up the term gatekeepers, because they still feel like I mean, obviously they're the ones with the clout to greenlight a project or not, you know, and I feel that that's still holding some of our films back from either being produced and or distributed. And it's you know, and I understand that it's a business. I understand it's a business where it's like you it's weird to take a chance on something and on some artists you don't know yet, you know. So I think that's where I think we're establishing as a Filipino film community and artist communities, like, okay, we have the talent, right? I think that's there already. Now it's a matter of, okay, we need sort of like the business people or the gatekeepers to support us, and whether they be Filipino or not, that's, I think, the next step is what we need, because it's still like we're still trying to get that part. It's like, yeah, you know, we made The Girl Who Left Home, but now it's a matter of distributing it, right? Finding a distributor for it so that everybody can see it, not just people from film festivals or who go to film festivals, you know. So I feel like that's probably the next step of where it's going, or where it should be going, you know. And yeah, it's just, I think a lot of filmmakers probably or do need that kind of gatekeeper behind them to be like, yeah, you know, they're champion almost, you know, they need a champion to for that, because I think a lot of, you know, indie filmmakers have had that champion to do that.
Absolutely. And I think allies are super important, you know, to try and find the allyship, because, you know, like in regards to gatekeepers, you know, gatekeepers mostly are not part of our community. And so to find that ally who believes in something that's not their own is so important, and they exist, and we've met them, and it's great. And so we encourage them to tell their other friends, to be allies, or to connect us to others that may be in that same boat.
So Ava DuVernay and Array, right? Her Array, which is under her, like they're doing a great job, I think, of sort of bringing people from different backgrounds and getting their stories out or getting their talents out. So we need more gatekeepers like Array to help us move forward or get our stories out there in a bigger picture.
Oh yeah, absolutely. In my dream, I would love to see The Girl Who Left Home mass distributed on like Amazon Prime or Netflix or somewhere, or even just like a theatrical release somehow. But
I want a theatrical living, because we had the privilege of hearing the film in a theater, and it's just so much. The experience is so much different, only because of the reactions and actually just like the audio. Sorry, I'm going to just make that right here.
Oh, you're good. And for example, like I'm here in Pittsburgh, and there's a theater here that I've noticed that they're always playing South Asian movies. Always. And I don't know if it's the ownership and management of the theater, or if there's a group that's like really making that happen, because it is an AMC theater. So I'm just, it is really exciting that they're doing that. And so, then obviously I'm always like, well, where can The Girl Who Left Home come in? And like, who are the people that make that happen? Because what if there was a Pittsburgh in theater premiere just because the AMC is really supportive of AAPI films? There used to be an Asian film festival in Pittsburgh that is no longer. And so I know I'm hearing like buzz of like bringing something back in Pittsburgh to keep that spirit alive, because the AAPI community here has been like wanting it, because unfortunately it closed right before the pandemic. So it could have been something for people to look forward to, but there's not. So there's, especially in Pittsburgh, that's such a ripe art scene, like where we have Carnegie Mellon University, like to not have an Asian film festival here, it's almost like a loss, because like it was so important to the arts community here in Pittsburgh. So who knows, like maybe we'll have something coming down the road here in Pittsburgh, because I know the Filipino community in Pittsburgh, when they could, have watched the movie, and they're waiting for it. They're like, when is The Girl Who Left Home going to happen here in a theater, and when can we not watch it on our computer screen, and hope that the cast can visit Pittsburgh, and they're ready to make all the lumpia and like house everybody for an in-person premiere here. So, and that's what I love about the Filipino film community, is like just Filipinos, like they're willing to support our own and do all that.
Yeah, and I think you touched upon a good point, is where everybody, I'll say the gatekeepers, they always look at the big markets: New York, LA, San Francisco. For some reason, they need to look at the smaller markets like Pittsburgh, Boston, Philly, even down in Texas and Houston. Just because we're there, there's a market there, and just roll the dice. But I think people they're just free to roll the dice. Because it's a big risk. It's not like you're rolling the dice and you lose $20. It's like,
Right. Yeah, it's a lot of money.
Yes.
It's weird to think that Boston and Philadelphia are looked at as
small markets. Yeah.
They're such big cities. And
no offense to those in Boston and Philadelphia, but compared to especially with the in the film world, it's only just about either New York or LA, or like Manila for dealing with the Philippines, or in the European markets like Venice or Berlin, those kind of things.
Right.
But no, but it's like the smaller market festivals are important. I mean, I was talking about this with somebody the other day. So like one of the best film festivals is this small film festival called Disorient Asian American Film Festival of Oregon. And they show in Eugene, Oregon, where it's like the Asian American population is, it's not that big, but I just feel like it's a vital part to show in a small city or small town, because it's like, we want people in these small towns who don't have the opportunity to see any of our films or even meet any of us because they live in, a small rural area. And I feel like something like Disorient gives that opportunity for non-Asians to see our stories. That's not because they're not on Netflix, or they're
Right.
they're not on Amazon Prime. You can't catch them on those kind of platforms. So I think it's important, like, to have that small market festival to give an opportunity for people to see our stories in that small market, and then
Absolutely.
ideally should breed understanding of what everybody's going through, and I think that's what's important, especially nowadays.
Yeah.
Want to hear more about your favorite TV shows and movies that are on countless streaming services?
Then listen to Up Next with your new favorite hosts, me, Kristen Aviles,
and me, Christina Walter.
Every other week, we'll highlight one genre, but 2 movies or TV shows, one old and one new.
We'll let you know what's hot and what's not from your favorite
or least favorite
streaming services.
And be sure to stay tuned to the end of each episode where we shout out an artist whose name you should know for their talent in the industry.
So follow us to stay up to date with your favorite hosts from Up Next,
a part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
Hey there, this is Brent Spillin, co-host of a Swingin' a Tribe MLB podcast. Listen, we're just a couple of fans who love to talk everything Cleveland Indians baseball. If you're a fan like us, then this is the podcast for you. Go Tribe.
Hi, this is Angelo Santos, and you are watching Producing While Asian.
So in your career, this is like a 2-part question. So in the first part of it, who have you now worked with, or even, you can say have now become friends with, but specifically speaking, just worked with, that you were like so excited that you had a chance to work with them through the producing career that you pursued, like kind of a moment of like, wow, like I personally in my own goals have arrived because like I got to meet and work with that person. So cool. And then in the future, who are some of your like bucket list, wish list people that you hope to either write and have them be in your project, or want to produce with, or things like that? Do you have like a top 3, of people that you're like, oh, one day, because who knows, they might listen to this podcast and would be like, well, I heard about Angelo on Producing While Asian. And so yeah.
The second question is tough. I'll think about it while I answer the first question. So the person that I had the crazy privilege and honor to work with is John Arcilia, who's a Filipino actor who just won Best Actor at the Venice Film Festival this year, which is like Leo's won it, Brad Pitt's won it, and when I cast him, so he was in my short film Pamanhikan, and when I cast him, I didn't know who he was. I hope I told him that one. Sure. But he just came into audition, and he was so good. And I was like, who's this guy? Come to find out that he's a respected and notable actor in the Philippines. Like he's on TV all the time now. And and then I go see his. I looked up what he did. He was in not the Born Supremacy. He was in the Born movie that Jeremy Renner was in, and then he was in Amigo, which was directed by that's terrible. I can't remember. Directed Lone Star and Sunshine State. John Sayles. Oof. I remember. So that was directed by John Sayles. So, and just I think knowing and becoming friends with him, and then seeing, knowing that he's a well-known actor in the Philippines, because that was never my intention. I never thought I would be working, let alone directing, an actor from the Philippines of his stature. And then he goes in, he's such a good actor, and then he goes and receives, the award. He wins Best Actor at the Venice Film Festival.
And you're like, that guy.
Yeah. he ate the set menudo. Come what?
Right.
Yeah, he would. He's gonna kill me. But in Pamanhikan, like my dad made menudo for the film because it was a prop. It was like a dinner scene, and then he kept eating it, and I'm like, John, you can't. We don't have any left for like other food. Dates. Yeah, it was a prop. So, but yeah, but it was an honor working with him. And that would be the one. But then also like all the other actors I've worked with, even though I didn't, I think Paolo Montalban was the only actor I knew beforehand, before we started filming.
Right.
Like it wasn't.
But you guys go way back, right?
But Pal and I, we grew up. He was the one that sang at our family parties.
Yeah.
Yeah, he actually sang at my cousin's funeral also, which was very nice of him.
Yeah.
So yeah, he was the only one I knew, like in all the films that I worked on, that I knew beforehand. And I actually worked with Norman Reedus, which I didn't know it was Norman Reedus at the time. Like he just did Boondock Saints. I think it was his only credit, and then I was a production manager on a short that we shot in New Jersey, and which I can't remember. I think the name of it was Walls. So yeah. So that was kind of a nice little, he's on The Walking Dead now, and it's like famous, Right. But I do, like, after, like, one of the things, I never watched Malcolm in the Middle, so I didn't know who Emmy was before she was cast in The Girl Who Left Home. But I'm really happy that I got to know Emmy. She's a great actress, great person, really. So funny.
Yes, absolutely. Like, you would, it's so awesome, like, just her sense of humor, because, for anybody that did watch her on TV and like know who she is, you're just like, oh, it's Emmy Colagato. And then like when you meet her, she's this like funny, goofy, open-hearted, lovely person that just like is here to joke about whatever happens. She's so down to earth and fun. So but yeah, so who do you wish to work with? And not wish, who will you work with in the future? Let's like manifest. Like who is going to be...
in all honesty, I kind of like, I want to work with the same people, same actors, kind of like this, like that whole like ensemble kind of network of actors that...
Like a Ryan Murphy type family.
Sort of. I mean, I credit it more like Christopher Guest, his kind of actors like Best in Show. He's working with Eugene Levy, Catherine O'Hara, and with all those, Parker Posey. I like that kind of camaraderie, because they've all, like, they did Best in Show and For Your Consideration and Mighty Win all together, and I kind of like, I would like to do something like that where it's like just work with the same actors, bring in like one or two that nobody's worked with, and then kind of learn how to work with them, So
yeah.
But anybody like really famous? I don't know. I don't.
Yeah.
And I know I should say somebody because in case they see this, they'll be like, "Ooh, yeah, I want to work."
In case they listen.
Yeah,
because we're going to tag every person that you mentioned today, so we're so they're going to know.
I don't know.
We can come back to it. We don't have to put any.
Yeah, let me think about
if it dawns on you. Yeah, if it dawns on you, we'll revisit toward the end. So, but yeah, it's really cool to when you finally do work with somebody that you're like, oh, I've been. Not even like I want this to happen, but when you just get a chance to work with someone and you're just like, oh yeah, or you realize that you're in the same room with somebody. I helped support an event in DC once where it was a concert and there was like featured talent and whatever, and everybody's focus was on Michelle Williams of Destiny's Child. Like everyone was like, oh my god, Michelle's performing, like blah blah blah. And there were like other performers who were just as amazing and were just on the same level as her, but not on the like you were in Destiny's Child level.
Yeah.
And so at this after party, we were all kind of mingling and mixing with each other and getting to know everyone. And I remember being like, oh yeah, like this one actor was really great and I loved her songs and she was so cool. Like I hope I run into her again, and like she was great. I think her name was like Ariana DeBose, and she was awesome. And now here we are in 2021. That concert was in like 2015 or 2016. And so it's like, here we are in 2021 and she's like getting her, nominations for being Anita in the new West Side Story. And, you're kind of, you look back on things kind of like your John Arcelia story where you're like, oh yeah, that person like was somebody that I was in a room with. So very cool.
Actually, can I plug a shout out to one of your friends that I would probably like to work with, Tara Trinity.
Oh yes! Oh my gosh, Tara!
I think I saw her in one of Lati Doe's shows here in New York, maybe, and I just was blown away by her voice. And
did we meet at that show that you saw her?
I don't know. Was Reggie there? Also, Reggie Kabiko, was he there? I don't know.
Yeah.
Because he was probably the reason why I went to go there, and then I just remember her on the piano and just her voice, and I was just like, who is this?
Isn't that crazy that you and I were in a room together and we didn't meet? And now we met, years later. But yeah, Tara, it's like she was, you knew she was on an episode a while back, and she's ready to collaborate on new projects and things. So I don't think that's impossible. I think it'll happen. All the hopes for
people, the new... they should really listen to her. you know.
Oh
'Cause
yeah,
even
Tara
like
Trinity is
Filipinos in the music industry are blowing up too now. I mean, like,
yeah,
her voice
because
is
she's
amazing.
just this. Yeah, it's there's a whenever I think of her voice, I think of that moment in Burlesque where the amazing movie Burlesque starring Christina Aguilera, where
And Cher.
right, and Cher and Kristen Bell, where Christina like sang and Kristen Bell says something like, "Oh yeah, you know, like the monster in her throat," and I'm just like, I think of Tara Trinity because it's like that idea of like she's this lovely, beautiful Filipino, Hawaiian, Puerto Rican woman, and you don't know what to expect from her, and then she opens her mouth and it's this like Christina Whitney Mariah voice that you're like, oh my god. And she plays piano and she plays other instruments and she's just incredible. So Tara, when you listen to this episode, just know we're gonna manufacture a way for all of us to work together
exactly.
soon. So what advice would you give to somebody who's AAPI or Filipino or whoever, or even in any underrepresented group who's looking to kind of move into producing or just into film and the arts and whatever, you know, something that you may have been told or something that no one told you that you discovered, like I wish I could share that with somebody who's willing to listen.
I mean, I think one of the, I don't know if it's really advice, but just if you want to be a producer,
doesn't have to be.
Just know that filmmaking, anything really artistic, is, unless you're writing, it's a collaborative effort. So you cannot always be right. It's you kind of have just to listen to other people's sort of insight, because, and this is more as a director, it's like we're, you know, especially with actors, like they have this insight into the characters that you never saw, and it just brings so much to the final project, to your film. Essentially it's your film, right? But you know, they bring just things you didn't see, you know. So it's like, just keep an open mind when you're, especially when you're as a producer. I think also you have to learn how to just work with people. Yeah, and I mean, in terms of advice, if this is what you want to do, just go ahead and do it. All your parents, all the titos, all my family members would be like, "What is he saying about our kids?"
Well,
no,
but
here's the thing: it's like, you know, it's like what we're doing right now, Mike, with the girl, with Mallory's doing, and you know what Diane Paragas is doing. It's like we're kind of giving this opportunity to the next generation. And we talked about this, where what we didn't have, it's like, oh, now they see themselves on screen. But then it's not even they see themselves on screen, they see people like them actually behind the scenes doing it also. And it's, you know, it and we're hoping it's inspirational for them to kind of pursue that, and not only for them really, and then but for their parents to be like, oh, hey, they're doing it, why can't my child, you know, do it? You know, right. You know, if you have 3 kids, just at least keep one open. If all 3 of them want to do it, you might be like,
like, I don't know about that.
No, just him, just that one, the more talent. No. No, that's terrible.
Pit your kids
that's terrible.
See, your,
you know,
your
it's like
Filipino side is showing.
Yeah. Yeah, that's sorry. Yeah, you know, we're becoming more like our elders. We realize.
Right. It's funny when you have moments and you're like, oh wow, like that like was my father's mouth on me. So in that advice arena, like, is there a situation that you feel, and this is very work interviewee, this question, but I feel like it's important, you know, like, is there it's under the challenge category, but like, do you feel like there's an experience that you want to share that you wish you had handled differently, that you're like, oh, like that was like a boo-boo, it turned out fine, or it didn't, but like, you know, if I could do that one thing again to make it better, you know, and it doesn't even have to be a bad experience, but like if there's something that you've experienced in your time or a project or something that you know, if you could go back and edit, how, you know, is there something that you want to share?
There's something I would like to,
because I know I've done plenty of that in my 10 years so far of producing live events in theater, where you're like, oh, I wish I kind of spoke differently to that person, or I, you know, handled that challenge a little differently than I did. Obviously, everything works out the way it's going to work out, but
yeah.
Did you ever have a moment like that you kind of sits in your mind sometimes?
I mean, if I did, I forgot it because I'm getting old.
Yeah. And of course, I ask you to speak in non-specifics. We don't have to name people, but
and the thing is, it's the end product. When the end product turns out great, you kind of forget about all that stuff that did happen. I mean, okay, so one of the films I produced in NYU student. I mean, they're just. I'll say this is what I didn't do good as a producer, was where I wasn't sort of say backing up the director. Like, she kind of had a breakdown, like a meltdown, and I wasn't on her side. I think I regret that because as a producer, you should be there for the director, but then as a director too, you really should kind of be considerate of your crew,
Sure.
And I think that's where I probably was like, okay, because she wasn't really there for the crew, and the crew was kind of like, I don't say like a mutiny or anything, you know what I'm saying? But,
Right.
So I think that that would probably be my biggest regret as producer, not being there for that director.
Sure.
And I already said it was a female, so oops.
And I feel like the bottom of that ask was kind of like, is there a lesson learned that you wanted to recall? And so, I agree with you. I think there are situations that I've been in where I feel like when I was young in this field and was like, the idea of being a producer and not saying that you were supposed to take sides, but like in the sense that like, knowing that you are at kind of the top of the corporate structure, quote unquote, of this, that you have to make sure that you're kind of balanced on both sides and making sure that you support the person that, needs to be supported, especially that relationship, like the director producer, because you are kind of equals, because you're in charge of so much together. And it's something that it's like a baptism by fire. You're like, okay, well, I now I know. And because I feel like a lot of the arts is interpersonal relationships. It's a lot of that.
Yeah. And looking back, I feel like it probably, I don't say, it sucks that I say this, but it's like maybe good that happened, because now I'm able to be like, okay, any other director that has sort of this meltdown, because and also I didn't understand what it means to be a director at that time, so I didn't know the stress that she was going through, and now I do, because I've directed something, and then I've also worked with a lot of directors who are friends or who become friends, so it's like I don't want them to have that stress, and that's part of the producer's job. Is like you have to just take stress off the director, or make their jobs easier, because when their jobs are easier, the film's gonna look great.
Right. Yeah. I feel like in the producer's seat, you kind of take on, hopefully not to heart, but you shoulder a lot of people's problems just to help keep the peace on set if there is a situation where there's like an interpersonal conflict.
Which, knock on wood, I have not happened, knock on wood, yet. Where it's like, where, I mean, I think that was probably the only situation or only film where I worked on where, oh no, that's actually not true. But
it happens. See, now I've opened the floodgates. You're remembering all of the bad memories from your times. But so the lesson, just support as much as you can, and that interpersonal things happen on set, and it's just part of it. And whether it's theater or film or wherever, I those lessons are important, because I've learned my fair share of little lessons here and there of, and it seems like a minor thing, but it affects major parts of your project.
Oh yeah,
right? So a small argument between a director and a crew member could affect the feeling on set or the productivity of your team on that day.
I'll tell you this story.
Go for it.
So a friend of, I wonder if they would call me if I tell this story. A friend of mine was directing his short. Well, actually, my best friend's husband was directing his short, and his friend who was the producer sort of gave up on the project because he had a problem with the cinematographer. And I had a 9 to 5 job at the time, and then I was lucky. My boss was so understanding, and he knew that he knew I did short films, kind of on the side thing. And so the situation was we were shooting in Jersey, and the cast or the crew and the cast were from New York, so he was supposed to drive the cast and crew out to location in New Jersey from the city. Well, he's like, no, I'm not doing it. I'm done. And then some of my friends are freaking out. They're like, what do you mean? Then who's going to drive this cast out? So they call me in the middle of I'm in the office like, oh, right. And they're freaking out for good reason, because that's like, what?
Yeah, of course.
And luckily it was a later shooting, that later call time for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway,
sure.
So I went into my boss's office like, hey, this is what's going on. Can I take off for the afternoon? He's like, is your work done? I was like, I can get it done. He's like, yeah, just get it done and go ahead. Leave your computer on. So I did. Yeah. And then I was like, I'll be back later that day. I didn't come back till the next day.
Didn't come back.
No. But then it's like, I was able to get the keys from him and get the van and drive out the cast and crew, because that would have just been like,
oh yeah,
terrible,
Mm-hmm.
But it's like that same, like, it's like that situations where it's like he's the producer, he had a problem with the cinematographer, and then he didn't really fix it. He just kind of was on his own, like, no, I'm not doing it anymore. It's like, what? I don't get it.
Right. When you realize as a producer how many people depend on you, and to have everything together and to make sure that things run smoothly, that your department chairs are moving smoothly and are doing their job, because otherwise it falls on you. So you've got to go back and do it yourself. So
at that time my friends knew, they knew, even though I was a producer on it, I did producing from the back end, where it's like I didn't have to be on set. That was sort of the agreement, because I had a job, a 9-to-5 job, office job. And then when that happened, it's like, no, you gotta it's like you gotta step up, especially because they were my friend, it's my best friend. I'm like, I'm not gonna let this happen to them,
right. Yeah, it's artists,
especially because we all know productions cost money.
Right. Yeah, that's another thing too, is like money has been wasted in that situation, and the higher you go, the bigger the disappointment if something like that happens. So all good. So now, anybody's listening, Terra Trinity, how can people get in touch with you, Angelo? And do you have anything coming up soon that you want to talk about? Because we're in December of 2021, and what's in the new year for you that you can talk about? So 2 questions: how can people get in touch with you, and second, what can people look forward to hopefully seeing you in the future?
The main way to get in touch with me is through email, august.angel821@gmail. Also, I have an Instagram and a Facebook. I'm not too keen on social media. I shouldn't say that too loud.
Oh, good.
But Jello10 with Jello with a G, GELO 1010 NYC. That's my Instagram handle. And on Facebook, you can just find me, Angelo Santos, on there as well. But the easier way is through email. And if anybody wants to get in touch with me, just say you heard me through producing While Asian podcast. And yeah, I'm pretty open to
Cool.
And then
I'm in the same boat as you. Like, I prefer to get business ideas and things through email, because I always lose things in social media messages. I don't keep track as closely on social.
Yeah. And then what's next on my horizon? Let me think. Well, actually, I need to do this plug. So I've been working with this nonprofit Filipino film organization called Cinema Sala.
Mm-hmm.
Our goal is to just bring artists of Philippine descent, Philippine filmmakers, either here in America, Canada, the Philippines, or even, we don't have anybody in Europe yet, so maybe we want to expand there. But yeah, just kind of bring everybody together, and just, like we said, it's another resource for us as filmmakers or as artists to kind of network and just bring our stories forward together. Because I think that's also important. Yeah. When we bring it together, it's a total different experience. Like, especially when we were on Nana called The Girl Who Left Home set, it's just amazing how, I remember Emmy was just, she says like her experience was so different on that set because it was just nothing she's experienced before,
Yeah. That's cool.
So I'm still volunteering for that. So catch Cinema Sala on Instagram. And then I am co-producing a feature right now called Johnny Loves Dolores. It's based on a short film, an award-winning short film, directed by Clarissa de los Reyes. We're in development stages now where we're fundraising to make the film, hopefully next year in 2022. And it's a very it's an immigration story that takes place here in Queens, New York, which is almost like the hub of immigrants in America. You can't walk around, you can't get on a subway here in Queens without hearing a different language. It's pretty awesome, actually.
That's cool.
So I'm co-producing that feature, and I have some stuff that I wrote in the pipeline. I wrote a pilot that I'm hoping will get some traction, but we'll see what happens with that. And I'm trying to write I'm trying to write my first feature, actually.
That's awesome. Well, we'll keep an eye and an ear out, and hopefully we'll see that feature come to life, down the road. I feel like there's never, a lot of people put deadlines on themselves, but I feel like it happens when it happens. You can't get wrapped up in like it needs to be by next year.
Actually, I mean, can we go back to the advice thing with be patient, be patient. Yes. Because if it's not happening now, you never know, it might happen later. Like, I've been doing this for a while, and it took me a long time, I think, to produce what I wanted to produce. And I think I was just fortunate that I was just fortunate to meet Mallory at the time that I met her, I think,
Right. So yeah, timing is everything. I feel it's things that are planned happen when they're supposed to be. And so, it sounds very meme-like, but it is meant to happen when it's going to happen, and that's what it'll be. And you can apply that to a lot of places in life too, outside of career. But so yeah, well, it's been really great to have you on the show. And
thanks for having me, Don Mike. This was fun.
We definitely want to have you back in the future, and if there's anything down the road that you want to come on and talk about, whether it's a project or a specific issue or whichever, that would be great. You are
I can't wait to the first Latino show. Just in February, right?
So it's coming in February, right? February 2022. We're coming back finally after a year off, so we'll keep an eye out for that. But you are the end cap to season 1 of Producing While Asian, so I'm so thankful and honored that you are here to close out season 1. We started with Jet Pariso, Tita Che, and we're ending with you. And so we're gonna try and do a lot of like crossover chats in season 2, and so keep your eyes on your inbox for those things, and we'll see you on here. Hopefully we can interview in person at some point, just because COVID, and we'll do our kind of crossover episodes hopefully together.
Thank you, Don Mike.
Thanks for listening to today's episode of the Producing While Asian podcast. Our theme song was created by Luckstock. We are produced by Press Play Podcasts, and the show is edited by Michael Santos Sandoval. If you have a moment, please leave a review and a rating, and be sure to send us any topic ideas you have to producingwhileasian@gmail.com. To follow us, stay updated, and read our blog, visit www.producingwhileasian.com. We hope you join us again soon.